All right, welcome back to the Privacy Files. Today, we have episode 15. And this episode is all about something that's going on across the pond. So here's what's been rattling around in my head this week. The UK just passed some new provisions to this little thing called the Online Safety Act. You may have heard of it, or maybe not. But just because it says UK, do not tune this out if you're in America or somewhere else. Because as we get into the show, you'll see that the implications from this, they may just affect you too. On paper, it sounds like the usual political feel-good nonsense. Protect the kids, clean up harmful content, hold big tech companies accountable. We really, really care. You can trust us. But the more I looked into it, the more it felt like we're watching a slow motion rollout of something that's way bigger. And what makes it wild is this isn't some authoritarian regime pulling this off. It's the UK. You know, the home of pubs, polite debates, and we're all in this together slogans. It's considered to be part of the Western-style philosophy of government. But if you look past the headlines, what they just passed is basically a government-controlled filter over the entire internet. Since 2023, people have already been arrested in certain places, basically for tweeting things that someone doesn't like. And these new provisions don't seem to make this any better. Conversely, quite the opposite. And yeah, before anyone chimes in, I get it. I'm not British. I'm not living under this thing day to day. But doing what I do, I can see exactly how this works. And also, maybe more importantly for the rest of us, how this is going to bleed out globally. Because the model is simple. We're here to protect you, but first, just hand over all your freedom. Over here in the US, those are fighting words. All right, so before we get into the guts of this thing, let's just lay out what the Online Safety Act is supposed to be. Again, on paper, it sounds like something no sane person would be against. It's meant to stop child exploitation content. It's supposed to crack down on terrorist propaganda. It's designed to make tech companies responsible for harmful material on their platforms. Sounds solid, right? Well, that's just the polished coating, the part that they parade in front of the cameras. But if you actually read into it, to me, the language is actually quite slippery. One of the main problems is it doesn't just target illegal content. It targets what they're calling harmful but legal content. You know, the vague stuff. Misinformation, offensive opinions, things that might upset people but aren't technically crimes. Now, I'm sure some of my American friends are going to say, wait. What about free speech? Well, unfortunately, or fortunately for us, we're pretty unique in America, having the right to free speech built right into the Constitution. This is something that we often take for granted. And this is not the case in other places, like the UK. And as if it wasn't bad enough, the law makes platforms responsible for proactively finding and removing that content. Which means if you run a service in the UK, you now have to play predictive censorship on behalf of the government. And that's where this thing flips upside down. Because the concern isn't just cleaning up dangerous content. It's putting platforms in a position where they have no choice but to over-police or face massive fines. or even get blocked by the UK entirely. And this isn't just a meaningless adjustment. It's essentially a structural rewrite of how digital communication works in a country. So today, I'm going to attempt to get into what exactly the new provisions are, what they're going to mean moving forward, my opinion on the difference between what is said and what is being done in practice, and finally, what it could mean if legislation like this starts to reach out further globally. This isn't just some UK problem. It's effectively a blueprint. And once that blueprint starts circulating, well, the rest of us are next. Now, before we get into it, real quick, do me a favor and hit the like button and restack this for me. Also, if you could comment what country you're from, please do so. I'm interested to see where the show reaches. Okay, thanks. Let's get into the episode. So here's the thing with laws like this. No one sells a surveillance framework by calling it a surveillance framework. They wrap it in safety. They wrap it in protection. Because who's going to stand up and say, no, I don't think we should protect children from predators? Nobody. You'd get absolutely annihilated. But when you dig into the wording of the Online Safety Act, you start seeing these little catch-alls that aren't about crime at all. Terms like I mentioned a minute ago. Legal but harmful, which is basically a blank check for interpretation. Because who gets to decide what's harmful? Company executives? Some AI-driven moderation filter? The government? All of the above? It's not, in my opinion, only about child abuse material. I mean, that's already illegal. That should already be aggressively prosecuted. To me, this is a sly way of regulating content that's uncomfortable. Opinions, satire, political dissent. All of it bundled under this big soft label of harmful content. And here's where it gets sketchy. The platforms are now on the hook for policing this stuff proactively. Not reactively, proactively. Which means if you're a platform like WhatsApp or Signal, or even a smaller service that's just starting out, you now have to build systems that preemptively catch harmful content, or you'll get fined heavily. And when companies are staring down massive fines or potential bans, what do? We can just look at history. They start filtering everything. They go way overboard. They build out moderation systems that overcorrect. And suddenly, your private messages are part of a compliance strategy, not a private conversation anymore. The beauty of this law, for those who want control, is that it outsources censorship. The government doesn't have to crack down directly. They just create an environment where platforms can't afford to host risky speech. It's not a top-down block. It's bottom-up suffocation. And this is why I keep coming back to this Trojan Horse analogy. You walk in the front door with a banner that says, "We're here to protect kids," but inside that banner is a content moderation death machine. One that can't differentiate between actual criminal content and a sarcastic meme that rubs someone the wrong way. That's not oversight. That's the infrastructure. And once that's in place, you can dial it up or dial it down as needed. All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room: encryption. End-to-end encryption specifically. This is the backbone of private communication. It's the one thing that still gives people this tiny sliver of control over who gets to read their messages. But now, under the Online Safety Act, platforms are expected to proactively find harmful content, even inside encrypted chats. This raises the obvious question: how do you scan encrypted messages without breaking the encryption? Spoiler, you can't. You either have encryption or you have full-on surveillance. There's no middle ground. But the sneaky trick that they're trying to pull now is this thing called client-side scanning. So what does that mean? Well, the pitch is simple. They'll say, we don't need to break encryption. We'll just scan the content before it gets encrypted. That way, privacy is preserved. Everybody wins, right? Wrong. What they're really saying is, we want to install surveillance software on your device. Not in the cloud, not on some external server, directly on your phone or on your laptop. Right there, in your pocket or on your desk. Now, this isn't me being crazy. That's exactly what they want. Here's what I mean. Let's say that they dupe you somehow into putting some extra software on your device that performs this encryption scanning. Well, once that scanning software is in the device and baked into the operating system, guess what? Congratulations, you've just given them an on-demand backdoor into your device. It doesn't matter if they say it's only for child abuse material or terrorism. The infrastructure is already there. All it takes is a quiet policy change that you didn't vote for, or a new regulation mandate you have no say in, and suddenly that filter starts scanning for whatever the government defines as harmful next year or in 2 years. If you don't think that that's where this is going, you're not only naive, but you're probably going to be the first round of victims. This is precisely why Signal and WhatsApp have said that they'd rather leave the UK than comply. These guys aren't stupid. They can see where this is going. Once you build that mechanism, it doesn't stay in one country. You think governments aren't watching this whole thing go down? Of course they are. You think big tech won't fold to pressure if it saves them a few billions in fines? Of course they will. And this isn't even a conspiracy. There's plenty of evidence to show that it's basic corporate behavior. A regulation gets passed, companies build a compliance pipeline, and that pipeline becomes the new standard. And privacy slowly shifts from a default setting to a premium feature for people who can afford it. The narrative with this is always the same. We're not breaking encryption. We respect your privacy. But what they're really saying is, we'll let you feel like you have privacy, as long as it doesn't interfere with what we need to scan. That's not security. That's blatant privacy theater. So look, I get it. I'm not sitting in the UK. This law isn't being aimed at me directly. But if you still think this is a UK only problem, I promise you, you're missing the bigger picture. And I really empathize with the people in UK that have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. For me, I couldn't even imagine it. But I also think that this is where things are going, possibly for the rest of us, and possibly sooner than we think. Because what they're doing is a clear blueprint in the making. Governments, for the most part, don't innovate. They replicate what's working in other places. One country passes a shiny new law in the name of safety, and suddenly every other country gets curious. They watch very intently on how it plays out. They see how the big platforms react, and then they draft their own version. It's all a giant game, slowly edging closer to the cliff to see just how close they can get without falling off. Australia did its own thing with the Assistance and Access Act, basically forcing companies to build access points for law enforcement. The EU is trying to slide in something similar with chat control. Even here in the US, they've been flirting with it for years. They just wrap it up in 1,000-page bills like Earn It or Restrict. Different names, but very much the same playbook. And the formula is always the same. First, frame it as public safety, target emotional triggers like kids, terrorism, disinformation. They write vague, flexible enforcement language. They outsource enforcement to private platforms, and then they let them do the dirty work under the threat of fines. And it works extremely well for them because they can then just blame the companies. And once one major tech company caves in one country, guess what? It's cheaper and easier for them to just apply that same compliance system everywhere. I mean, why geofence moderation tools when you can just standardize it globally and stay ahead of regulators? What's really happening here is a global shift from platform regulation to platform deputization. Governments don't need to directly censor. They just make it financially impossible for companies to not censor. In effect, these companies are basically working for the government, just with a few extra steps. This is precisely why the UK's Online Safety Act matters, even if you never set foot in London. We don't want this becoming the new baseline. Trust me. I hope by now you're starting to open your eyes, but the sad fact is, none of this looks like dystopia when it's rolling out. It looks like protecting children. It looks like responsible platform governance. Until, suddenly, free expression has to pass through a compliance filter before it's allowed to reach an audience. As an independent creator whose business runs on the ability to voice my opinions and reach the audience, I don't want to start filtering myself to be inside some sort of guardrails. I don't know, maybe some people are okay with that now. If you think I'm nuts, go ahead and leave me a comment as to exactly why you think so. So we've talked about content regulation, but here's where laws like the Online Safety Act go beyond just regulating content. They regulate behavior. They regulate speech. They shape what people are willing to say or not say online. If you're a journalist and you're covering a controversial story, you now have to think, is this going to trigger a platform's overzealous moderation algorithm? Will this post get flagged as harmful, even if it's technically true? Will this piece even reach my audience? Or is it going to get throttled into oblivion before it leaves my draft folder? And if you're a whistleblower, well, you can just forget it. You're not just risking professional backlash anymore. You're risking getting preemptively silenced by compliance filters before your information even has time to surface. This is exactly how this stuff works. They don't come out with loud censorship banners. It's all about friction. That's the real secret game. They add in extra steps, they silently throttle you, platform policies that just happen to reduce your visibility into no longer being worth the hassle. For most people, that's enough to make them stop posting. Not because they've been outrightly banned, but because they realize that the system is rigged to punish certain kinds of speech while pretending to be neutral. What really bothers me the most is how effective that this compliance culture is. It turns companies into preemptive enforcers without any formal censorship orders being given. They'll say, "We're not censoring, this is just to maintain a safe platform." And the government gets to shrug and say, "Hey, the platforms are making their own moderation choices." That's when they've achieved full plausible deniability. This is where free expression dies. Not in a fiery crackdown, but in a quiet shift where platforms start asking themselves, is it safer to remove this content now or wait for the regulator to fine us later? Instead of companies having a philosophy of pushing boundaries, they become risk averse. And it also doesn't just stop at harmful content. It applies to anything that threatens the narrative. And this is often things that are true. And again, this may currently be UK based, but it's leading to a global shift in how governments and corporations manage speech. The Online Safety Act is just the most recent polished version of a playbook that's been quietly in motion for years. So here's the part of the show where people expect me to give some grand solution, some silver bullet that's going to fix the entire mess. But sorry to disappoint you, that's not how this works. Sadly, I doubt that we're going to be voting our way out of this. We're not going to get some magical privacy law that suddenly holds corporations accountable. And platforms aren't going to grow a conscience just because they read some scathing op-ed. The only thing we can actually control is our posture. This means how we approach the system, how much data we're feeding it, or how passive we're willing to be. This is really the core of my message. You need to take personal responsibility for your privacy. This year, I've tried to give you all the tools that you need to do this. If you're still wondering what to do, I suggest you start with my 5-day email mini course. Over 5 days, I walk you through how to break all those bad habits, which basically puts you in this position to begin with. If you don't want to do that, start with something small. Audit your apps. Look at what's running on your phone and what permissions you've blindly handed out. For this, you can use something like tracker control if you're on Android, or lockdown privacy if you're on iPhone. You need to cut off the telemetry wherever you can. You also need to stop assuming that the defaults are in your favor, because they're not. And if you're still using services like Google Photos or even iCloud, just know you're building them a surveillance data set, not a backup plan for yourself. If you'd like to try something that's outside the walled gardens of Android or iPhone, something that's built for your privacy with actual defaults that are set in your favor, or what about built-in privacy-focused tools built on an operating system that doesn't quietly log everything in the background? I really suggest that you consider getting an above phone.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins, no advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. includes a VPN, private email and calendar, private chats, video calls, internet phone, and a search engine. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides and video courses. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
If I could pick and choose exactly how I'd want to set up a privacy-focused smartphone, this thing would be it. I've been using mine for about a week and a half, and I honestly can't recommend it enough. I've just partnered with Above Phone to get all my subscribers a special deal on all their products. Oh yeah, they have laptops and tablets too. If you want to check them out, head over to abovephone.com/firewall. It's a great way to help yourself, and you'll be supporting me too. Also, you need to start informing yourself on exactly what you're giving away. The secrets are in the terms of service and the privacy policies of every app and platform that you use. Now, unless you have an extensive knowledge of legal jargon, it will be pretty tough to translate. So this is exactly why I built the Clarity Privacy Analyzer. If you haven't tried it out, you really should. I've been getting a ton of great feedback since I released it last week. You can quickly analyze a terms of service or privacy policy to get a full risk assessment report on how your data is being used, stored, or, let's be honest, sold. It also shows you what you should look out for and what you should do after you agree. This is so you can be sure that you're being as safe as possible. You can also analyze potentially malicious links or documents. All of this for free. This was a highly requested project by the community, and it was really a passion project for me. I also just submitted a Clarity browser extension the other day for review, so hopefully that should be available later on this week for Brave, Firefox, and yes, even Chrome if you still have to use it. This will at least help you a little bit. So if you want to make sure that you get access to the browser extension as soon as it comes out, make sure that you're following me, because I will be notifying everybody later on this week through notes when it's available. You don't need to be a cybersecurity pro to start making noise in the system. You really just need to stop playing the game on their terms. The goal here isn't perfection. The goal is friction. You got to slow them down. You got to muck up their data collection. And you got to refuse to be predictable. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The system counts on your addiction to convenience. It counts on you getting tired, getting numb, and scrolling right past stuff just like this. But if enough people stop feeding it passively, the beast will get weaker. Not overnight, but eventually it will happen. We just need more people joining the fight. So that's why it's so crucial that you like these videos, you leave comments, and you restack them for your network. The more engagement that we get, the further we can reach. This community is absolutely amazing, and I want it to keep growing. But it can't do that without all your help. All right, so here's where we're at. The UK's Online Safety Act is being sold as a safety measure. But what is it really? It's a filter. A filter that gets to decide what's acceptable to say, what's acceptable to see. And we also talked about who gets to make those decisions. And soon, it may not matter if you're in the UK, the US, or anywhere else. The playbook is going global now. This is how they scale control, without ever needing to say the word censorship out loud. So the move here isn't to panic. The move is to stop playing the passive consumer role. Be intentional about what you use. Be difficult to track. Push back on convenience when it's weaponized against you. And if you want to be a deeper part of this community and get access to my most in-depth insights, consider becoming a Firewall Insider. As soon as you click Upgrade, you'll get access to the Firewall Report. This is a private intel feed of emerging threats, breach notifications, and identity theft risks. You'll also get weekly members-only content where I share my most valuable tips. You'll also get a digital copy of my book, The No BS Guide to Securing Your Network, and this will give you an enterprise-level security at home. Finally, you also get 20% off all of my digital products and workshops. If you upgrade now, you'll get a special 50% discount for the first year, but you need to go to beyondthefirewall.substack.com/insider50, or you can just use the link below in the show notes. Also, quick note before you bounce. If you want a personalized privacy implementation plan for your unique digital footprint for free, head over to personalprivacyplanner.com. All right, that's it for this episode of the Privacy Files. Remember, keep just enough friction in the system to make them work harder for it. And until next time, stay informed, stay secure, and stay curious. Have a great week, everyone.